Discover the amazing journey, 12 surprising lessons of transformation in pursuing your dreams. Sarah felt the weight of the world subtly pressing down on her as she wiped the counter clean at the diner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating her tired face, where wrinkles of worry were already deepening at just 34. Each plate she served seemed to point out the dreams she had let slip away when she welcomed Ethan into this world. Her bright, imaginative son, whose laughter filled their tiny home with a fleeting joy, was also a reminder of every late-night shift she pulled to make ends meet. The yearning to inspire students flickered on the edges of her consciousness like an unfulfilled promise, a ghost of the life she once envisioned for herself. Ethan tugged at her sleeve, his wide eyes filled with excitement, the light of a cherished dinosaur project in front of him. "Mom, can you help me with the dinosaur names?" His innocence danced before Sarah, momentarily distracting her from her mounting fatigue. As she delved into the project, attempting to explain the T-Rex and the Triceratops, something shifted. Her heart raced as she found joy in illuminating the details, forgetting the clamor of dishes and orders from tables. The concepts flowed from her mouth, sparking excitement in Ethan's eyes. Could this be her calling? Yet, a wave of unease washed over her. What if this wasn't enough? Just a momentary flicker in a dark room? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but as the days bled into weeks, uncertainty tightened its grip. Every attempt to revive her old dream fell under the weight of insecurity. Would she have time to study between work? Would others understand a single mother's struggles for better circumstances? Whispers followed her like shadows, each doubt echoing louder than the last. As she wrestled with the decision to return to school, a familiar ache surfaced. Each bill she paid and every table she cleaned felt like shackles, tying her to a life she had no choice but to lead. Her father, a retired school principal, cheered her on, but even his unresolved aspirations felt burdensome at times. On one particularly exhausting night, in the pause between waves of customers, a soft nudge of frustration grew into an ember of determination. What if she weren't just a waitress or a single mother? What if she could be someone who inspires like she dreamed? Could she really challenge the world that pushes her down with skeptical glares? Yet, each triumphant thought crumbled in the face of looming fears. The feeling of inadequacy surged with every essay unsubmitted and late shift worked. The push and pull left her breathless, stirring a storm inside that threatened to unleash at any moment, and on the day of graduation, as she stood in her cap and gown, the shadows of all she had battled darkened the edges of her thoughts. Would her effort, her relentless quest for a brighter future for both her and Ethan be acknowledged by those who barely saw her? The wonder of possibility felt heavy on her heart, mixed with an overwhelming dread of being overlooked once more. Would she never escape the roles constricting her? Would she forever remain a nameless waitress in the heart of town, invisible even in victory? The question lingered painfully, fueling her resolve to push through, even as her pulse raced with the unyielding tension of uncertainty. The day after graduation, Sarah awoke with a mix of exhilaration and dread, her cap still hanging on the doorknob of her bedroom. For years, the diploma hung tantalizingly just out of reach, like a distant star she could only admire from afar. Now that she had it, reality loomed large. What were the next steps in her journey? She had to confront her future, a future that felt both liberating and terrifying in equal measure. Ethan's laughter drifted from the living room, his carefree spirit momentarily distracting her from the chaos of her thoughts. He was already immersed in his dinosaur project, a bright testament to his endless curiosity. It dawned on Sarah that he stood before a beacon of possibility. He could achieve anything. But who would set that example for him? Every day she spent in the diner overshadowed the aspirations he held. It was time to shape something anew, not just for her, but for him. With each passing hour, Sarah became increasingly aware of how much she'd held herself back. The thought of applying for programs that catered to aspiring teachers began to outline itself in her mind. Yet, each application felt like a test of her worth, and her resolve waned with the smell of diner food clinging to her clothes. Could she really step into classrooms, sharing knowledge, stoking the fires of intellect in young minds? Each doubt whispered insidiously that she was still the waitress at the local diner who couldn't break free. As she prepared for work, she caught Ethan eyeing the diploma on the table, a self-portrait of her struggle. His innocent admiration brightened the room, lifting her spirits temporarily. "Mom, you did it. You're a teacher now, right?" His words spun her for a moment. The truth was still tethered by the idea of working in a diner, a distance she had yet to bridge. But she realized she had to mold that impression if she wanted Ethan to chase his dreams. She had to pursue hers as well. A little later, she found herself idly scrolling through community college websites on a slow afternoon shift. She gazed at the programs set for future educators, potential paths unfolding like a roadmap of dreams yet to be realized. Still, her heart raced with indecision, the thrumming pulse of anxiety keeping her confined. Then came a surprise visitor, a former classmate from high school, Lisa, who once seemed saturated in promise and ambition. They shared a brief conversation that illuminated the path ahead. "I teach now, Sarah. It wasn't easy, but if you have the passion." Lisa's eyes lit up. "You can do this. You inspire," she affirmed. That simple acknowledgement felt like a key unlocking another door. Sarah recognized it, the validation that propelled one toward purpose hung heavy in the air. A new feeling emerged, a transformation of identity, a vision of herself not bound by her current circumstances but as a beacon of knowledge and encouragement. Dusk settled as Sarah completed her shift, and on the drive home, she played Lisa's words over in her head like a mantra. The road was lit by a rising determination, nudging her towards a decision that would shape not just her career, but her soul. When she stepped inside, Ethan stood waiting in the living room, eyes pleading. "Did you think about my project? I was hoping we could work on the dinosaurs together." His excitement sparked a realization. Each moment with him was a chance to remind herself of her purpose. In giving him support, she found motivation in her own ambitions, a duality between guiding him and forging her path. Tomorrow, she would apply for that teaching program. The thought sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. But now, the distant shadows of doubt began creeping back into focus. Could she sustain the leap of faith it required? The time had come to face thus. The whisper of uncertainty echoed within, blending with determination as the landscape shifted. What awaited at the threshold was not merely a teaching certification but a revelation of self that had long been denied. As the evening deepened, Sarah hovered at the edge of her future, a chasm of uncertainty before her, reflecting an impending choice. What lay beyond that leap? Would she be ready for the challenge that beckoned just out of view? The morning light spilled through the curtains, illuminating the faint dust motes dancing in the air. Sarah blinked against the brightness and sat up, feeling the weight of her decision settle upon her. Today was the day she would take that first step. Her heart thrummed with a mix of fear and exhilaration as she glanced at the diploma still perched on the table, a symbol of achievement intertwined with her deepest doubts. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, Sarah thought of the many mornings spent with the rhythmic clatter of dishes and the lingering smell of breakfast at the diner. That familiar atmosphere faded in her mind, replaced with the vision of a classroom filled with curious faces, ready for her to ignite their passion for learning. Yet, reality collided with aspiration. She had never been in charge of more than a few unruly tables. Her fingers trembled as she navigated to the application page, feeling the crushing burden of expectation both from herself and Ethan. What if I fail? The thought draped over her like a shroud, but she shook it off. Lisa's encouraging words echoed in her mind, stirring the embers of hope. Taking a deep breath, she filled in the first few fields of the application. Her resolve vacillated with each keystroke, until a sudden warmth enveloped her. It was the memory of Ethan's face beaming with pride, believing in her potential. Filling out the sections became less about demonstrating her past and more about crafting her mission. Hours slipped by as she cautiously answered personal statements, the words pouring from a wellspring of uncharted aspirations. Her past shadow of doubt began to dissolve into the stark reality of certificates and endorsements. This was the first step, but also, the most pivotal. "Mom! Can you help me now?" Ethan's call interrupted her focus. The urgency of his request brought her back to the present moment, a delicate blend of urgency and warmth. She glanced at the clock and realized that the time had flown. "Coming." She called back, but a surge of defiance rushed through her. She wasn't just Ethan's mom, she was a future educator. She was crafting a legacy that would ripple through generations, just like the lessons she hoped to impart. They would work on his project together later. For now, this moment belonged to her. In her mind, the vision of a classroom shifted. It was no longer just an ambition, it was a promise to Ethan, to herself, to those she would educate. She pushed aside the fear, plunging back into the application process, relishing the thrill of the unknown. Later that afternoon, after submitting her application, she found Ethan sprawled with blue dinosaurs and colorful markers across the living room floor. His passion ignited her own. They dove into the project, laughing and learning, each moment affirming her choice. Not only was she supporting his dreams, but she was also constructing her own reality brick by brick. Before bed, her phone buzzed with an email notification. Heart racing, she opened it, discovering a message from the college. They had received her application. Congratulations. Yet, with this good news came a jagged pang of anxiety. This was just the beginning. As she tucked Ethan in, she pondered what kind of teacher she would be. Would she be innovative? Relatable? Could she rise beyond the fears that shackled her? All the pathways she envisioned brightened with possibility, yet still shrouded in uncertainty. Would she be welcomed in this new community? Was she ready to confront the inevitable challenges? As sleep settled over her, one question remained: what would become of her newly ignited ambition? The journey was just beginning, and a world of unanswered questions awaited her in the morning light. What would be the first challenge she would face in this exhilarating, yet daunting pursuit of her dreams? The sun dawned on another day, casting a soft glow that nudged Sarah from sleep with a fresh urgency. With her application submitted, she felt a shift within herself, a burgeoning sense of identity that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Today, she resolved, would be about exploring the next step, the interview process. After a quick breakfast with Ethan, she found herself in the quiet of her living room, staring intently at the letters strewn across the coffee table, acceptance letters from different colleges. They lay there as physical reminders of her ambition, each one promising a different path. But there was no time for indecision or fear. The clock was ticking, and she needed to prepare. Determination settled over her as she pulled a notepad toward her, flipping to a blank page. It was time to draft a strategy, outlining how she would present her experiences and aspirations during the interview. As if in a trance, she began to pen down thoughts: her love for teaching, the moments in the diner where conversation sparked creativity, and the profound connection she had with Ethan when helping him learn. However, the pleasant tide of creation quickly turned, and doubt crept back in. What could she bring to the table that others hadn't? In a moment of vulnerability, she pondered her own worthiness amid a sea of accomplished peers. Would they see her as merely a waitress with dreams, or as a visionary who could shape young minds? She pushed through, looking away from the gloom of uncertainty. She recalled the faces of her past teachers who had genuinely cared, who had sparked fires of passion within her. "I will be that kind of teacher," she whispered to herself. The realization brought with it a flicker of commitment, a dedication to ensure that her students would know the power of belief and creativity. The day progressed, small tasks filled her hours, but thoughts of the upcoming interview loomed large. Each chore turned into an opportunity for self-reflection. Cooking dinner became a rehearsed speech about her teaching philosophy, folding laundry morphed into visualizing her classroom decorated with art projects and colorful posters. The mundane transformed into the meaningful. The world of possibilities took shape around her. As she walked Ethan to the bus stop the next morning, she mustered the courage to verbalize her fears to him in a way he could understand. "You know, buddy, sometimes I wonder if I'm ready to be a teacher," she admitted, glancing down at his delighted face. "But Mom, you can teach anything," he responded, his eyes wide with admiration. unaware that his unwavering belief illuminated the path she stood hesitantly upon. His simple truth ignited something within her. Belief doesn't always come from the number of accolades or experience but from passion and commitment. Then it hit her: she didn't need to craft a perfect persona, she needed to be authentic. With this newfound perspective, she began redefining her approach. It was not only about her qualifications but also her experiences, her struggles, and her strengths. In the evenings, she practiced mock interviews with Lisa. Each session, while immeasurably helpful, was steeped in laughter, self-doubt, and honesty. "How do I keep it all together?" she muttered, only half joking. "What if I stumble over my words and lose their interest?" "That's human, Sarah. You're not a robot. You're the passionate mother who finds joy in numbers and storytelling," Lisa reassured her. Finally, the day of the interview arrived. As Sarah approached the college campus, her heart fluttered wildly, its rhythm echoing her internal conflict. She took a deep breath, reciting a mantra, and believing she had crafted a unique journey worthy of their attention. This was more than an interview, it was a confrontation with her fears and a commitment to her vision. She was prepared to demonstrate who she was, no pretenses. As the interview room's door opened, a rush of resolve surged within her. The moment had come to face not just the interviewers but the doubt that had followed her, unbeknownst to her. Those moments would serve as the crucible forging the teacher she was destined to become. Little did she know that a challenge awaited her that would make her question what it truly means to inspire others. What storm would she face in this uncharted territory, and how would her response mold her future? The interview began with a series of standard questions designed to assess her qualifications. Sarah steeled herself, focusing on maintaining eye contact with each of the interviewers as they took turns firing inquiries her way. Her answers spilled forth in a polished manner, a reflection of her carefully crafted responses during her practice sessions. Yet, with each question, the familiar specter of self-doubt loomed, both distracting and illuminating her insecurities. As they inquired about her commitment to education, she felt a sudden jolt to what lay at the core of her resolve. "What's your teaching philosophy?" one interviewer asked, prompting a visceral response. It was the moment of truth. In that second, Sarah had to decide whether to recite the rehearsed jargon or draw from the heart. "I believe in fostering a learning environment that celebrates creativity and curiosity," she began, her voice steadier than before. "But more importantly, I believe in nurturing the individual within every student." Invocation of her experiences, tucked away in the back of her mind, surged forward, and she began to speak about Ethan, their shared explorations of the world through simple questions and imaginative leaps. "I teach him as I hope to teach my students," she continued, the words anchoring her to a deeper understanding of her craft. "Learning isn't just about imparting knowledge, it's about sparking a love for discovery. It's about believing that each student has something remarkable to offer." The room shifted. The interviewers leaned in slightly, not just as assessors but as fellow dreamers. In Sarah's voice, they heard that she wasn't just looking to fill a role, she was on a mission to change lives, implementing a legacy built on trust, inspiration, and growth. As the questioning progressed, Sarah felt an unexpected buoyancy. The answers flowed not from memorized phrases but from her authentic self. With each question they posed, fragments of her past melded into her current vision, revealing layers of her character that she had almost forgotten existed. It was troubling just how much she had tucked away in the corner of her mind as she focused solely on logistics, the application processes, the academic accolades. But here, she was sharing her narrative. On her way home, she felt a lightness in her spirit. The weight of anxiety had melted away during that interview. There had been no performance, she had simply existed in the moment, confronting her fears and transforming them into motivation. Yet, as she pulled into her driveway, a thought pierced through her elation: how would she continue to nurture this authenticity, not just for herself but for her future students? Questions lingered like whispers in her mind, each echoing the uncertainty that still lingered. Sarah understood that her journey was not concluded, rather, she had only crossed the first major threshold. As much as she had overcome in the interview, a fundamental aspect of her evolution awaited when she would need to face genuine challenges in the classroom. What would her methods look like in practice? That evening, while Ethan shared the minutiae of his day over dinner, an unexpected resolve washed over her. The work wouldn't just be about imparting knowledge in theory. She would need to develop her skills to foster resilience in herself and her need to adapt and innovate as a teacher. The storm was brewing on the horizon. She would soon confront not only the realities of schooling but also the broader challenges of inspiring a generation in an ever-changing world. What would these trials reveal about her commitment to her students, and how would they mold the teacher she aspired to become? The next morning brought with it a sense of anticipation mingled with apprehension. Sarah's mind raced as she sat sipping her coffee at the kitchen table, her thoughts swirling around the possibility of securing a teaching position. It was time to step out of the safety of theory and into the uncertainty of practice. She knew that simply evading self-doubt was not enough. She had to actively confront it. Driven by the urgency to prepare, she spent the entire day researching teaching strategies and classroom management techniques. In the quiet moments between sifting through articles, she jotted down her core educational values, attempting to weave a tapestry of her approach that transcended the mere theoretical framework. She understood that to effect change, her practice must align with her ideals. They must dance together seamlessly. Eager to steel her mental fortitude, Sarah decided to visit a local school for some first-hand observation. As she walked through the hallways filled with bustling students, the energy was palpable. Yet, it was a different kind of anxiety that gripped her this time, a realization of the inevitable challenges she had to face. Standing at the threshold of a classroom, she paused, her heartbeat quickening as she caught glimpses of teaching in action. Inside, a veteran teacher effortlessly guided a mixed-ability classroom, fostering collaboration across various levels of understanding. It was inspiring, yet unsettling. Sarah observed how the teacher tailored her approach, grappling with disruptions while encouraging students to express their opinions. The moment crystallized for Sarah. The essence of teaching was not about perfection but possibility birthed from flexibility and genuine connection. Returning home that evening, Sarah felt emboldened. She began to map out her lesson plans, but in a striking departure from her previous methods, she infused each one with personal reflections and insights gleaned from her observations. What would it mean to directly engage with her students' curiosities? She challenged herself to create lessons that didn't merely serve the curriculum but ignited passion and inquiry. Her excitement, however, was punctuated with moments of doubt. What if her lessons fell flat? What if students didn't respond? Each inquiry provoked a deeper introspection. Unable to stifle her anxious thoughts, she found herself pondering the internal contradictions of teaching. Could she be both a guide and an honest learner? As she navigated this uncertainty, Ethan's words echoed in her ears from their dinner table conversation. Learning is all about trying new things, Mom. Those simple words reignited her resolve. She reminded herself that mistakes were not failures, they were stepping stones for both her and her future students. With new vigor, Sarah decided to engage with a mentor, someone who could lend guidance while she honed her nascent skills. She reached out to a local community education center, hoping to attend workshops that would bolster her confidence and enrich her teaching techniques. The thought of learning alongside others, who were equally naive and enthusiastic, thrilled her, but as she prepared to take the leap into this new chapter, she felt a tightening in her chest. Pushing herself out of her comfort zone stirred both excitement and trepidation. Would she fully embrace the growth that awaited her, or would she cling to safety, allowing her fears to eclipse the opportunities unfolding before her? The next morning, Sarah stood before her computer, poised to enroll. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the submit button. This moment held the potential to ignite her journey, but at what cost? The reality of stepping fully into her role as an educator loomed ahead like an unanswered question, thick with the promise of trials and triumphs alike. Then, with a deep breath, she pressed down, crossing the threshold and stepping into the unknown. What awaited her in the workshops? Would they truly challenge her to confront the doubts that still simmered beneath the surface as she pursued her dream? The first workshop was held in a sunlit room adorned with vibrant artwork created by students. As Sarah entered, she was struck by an electric mix of nervousness and eagerness. The participants ranged from fresh graduates to seasoned educators, each carrying their unique experiences and aspirations. This kaleidoscope of backgrounds heightened her awareness of her own unfamiliarity. Was she truly ready to contribute? Her mentor, a charismatic educator named Lucy, welcomed everyone with an open smile. "This is a space to explore," Lucy encouraged. "We'll share our challenges, celebrate our failures, and cultivate our successes together." The warmth infused Sarah with a sense of belonging, momentarily quieting her self-doubt. Yet, as they introduced themselves one by one, Sarah's heart raced with insecurity. When her turn approached, she questioned whether her words would resonate or fade into the noise of more seasoned voices. "Hi, I'm Sarah," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm new to teaching and I'm here to learn how to engage students more effectively." A brief silence ensued, the other workshop participants gazing at her, drawn in by vulnerability. A shy smile bloomed across someone's face, breaking the tension. It was a simple acknowledgement, but it made Sarah feel less alone. The workshop proceeded with interactive discussions about teaching methodologies, and Sarah eagerly absorbed every detail. After one session, the group engaged in a simulation meant to simulate a classroom atmosphere. Participants took turns playing the role of both teacher and student, navigating challenges like engagement, behavior, and unexpected questions. When it was her turn to teach, the weight of expectation crashed upon her. Sarah stood before her peers, heart hammering as she introduced a mock lesson on the water cycle. Halfway through her presentation, she was met with a fierce barrage of questions from students, and her confidence wavered. Each inquiry made her feel more exposed, as if they stripped bare her inexperience. She fumbled her way through answers, frustration gnawing at her. "Remember," Lucy interjected gently, "you're learning too. Think of what you can do differently next time. Embrace the opportunity to grow." This revelation deepened Sarah's understanding of her role. It wasn't only about knowledge but about building a relationship where mistakes fostered growth both for her and her students. She realized that vulnerability could be reframed as strength. The sheer act of acceptance allowed her to pivot, and each error had the potential to teach both her and her peers. As the sessions continued, Sarah felt a powerful shift within. With each interaction, she gradually learned to articulate her ideas more clearly and confidently. She practiced asking open-ended questions, learning to gauge responses and adapt her approach dynamically. The strategy not only invigorated her teaching moments but started transforming her perception of herself too. But with this newfound confidence came a nagging unease. Sarah began questioning whether it was enough. Would she be able to replicate this progress outside of the workshop setting? The looming specter of her initial failures taunted her, flickering ominously at the edges of her mind. Leaving the first workshop, excitement wrestled with uncertainty. Could she embody the lessons learned as she approached her future classroom? The idea of implementing new techniques felt thrilling, yet the risk of stumbling haunted her. As Sarah navigated the path ahead, the echo of Lucy's words lingered. Embracing the opportunity to grow meant confronting her fears. What would happen when she faced her first classroom of students alone? Would she crumble, or could she rise to the occasion and inspire them? The next morning, Sarah prepared for a daunting first step, crafting her original lesson plan, ready to face the reality of teaching her own classroom for the first time. Would her new strategies hold up under the pressure, or would her fears take root once more? Sarah's morning dawned like the hesitant unfurling of a flower, bright with promise yet tinged with apprehension. The lesson plan sprawled before her, a tangible representation of her aspirations and worries intertwined like threads in a frayed tapestry. She breathed deeply, steadying her thoughts before translating them into action. With each stroke of her pen, she was acutely aware of the weight of expectation, both from her future students and herself. This lesson wasn't merely an exercise in teaching, it was a litmus test for her growth. Could she transform the abstract ideas she had absorbed into something meaningful? As she scribbled her objectives, a knot tightened in her stomach. What if they didn't engage? What if she faltered, like before, lost in a sea of their questions? Each possibility spiraled into self-doubt, threatening to cloud her vision. With a determined flicker in her heart, she set those thoughts aside and focused on the excitement of discovery instead. The classroom awaited her, a blank canvas, and she could paint it with her newfound insights. Adopting Lucy's philosophy, Sarah decided to weave in elements of creativity and openness. She would invite her students to explore, not just absorb. With every task she planned, she insisted on an element of interaction, aiming to create a dialogue rather than a monologue. As she crafted a small assignment encouraging students to imagine a water cycle in the context of their daily lives, a thrill surged within her. Instead of asking them to memorize facts, she aimed to connect the lesson to their lived experiences, something she wished someone had done for her. It felt as if she was forging a bridge between her past uncertainties and her present growth. Hours flew by, and she lost herself in crafting engaging stories and questions that would prompt curiosity. By the time she stepped into her classroom, she felt strangely invigorated, the recent workshop's lessons reverberating in her mind. However, as the clock ticked down to the moment she would officially introduce herself, that familiar gnawing uncertainty crept back in. The room slowly filled with eager faces, chattering and buzzing with energy, oblivious to the tempest within Sarah. The students were diverse, each bringing unique backgrounds and learning styles, but she could only focus on her own anxieties. When the bell rang, it reverberated like a gunshot, signaling the start of the unknown. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Ms. Sarah, and I'm thrilled to explore the world of science with you," she proclaimed, her voice catching slightly but gaining momentum. She chose to own her introduction, abandoning the earlier trepidation with a shaky but sincere smile. As the class unfolded, she felt an unexpected shift. She was not just delivering a lesson, but rather collaborating with her students. Their laughter and questions didn't feel like a barrage anymore, they were invitations to delve deeper into the lesson. An opportunity for mutual discovery. However, halfway through, an unforeseen incident struck. One student, clearly disinterested, let out a loud yawn and commented dismissively, "This is boring." The words hung heavily in the air, each syllable a dagger that threatened to pierce her newfound confidence. Every eye in the room shifted to her, the weight of judgment palpable. For an agonizing second, panic twinged in Sarah's chest. Would this one comment unravel her resolve? Yet, revisiting Lucy's teachings, she realized this moment was just another chance at teaching point. "Thank you for sharing that," she responded, her voice steadied. "What do you think would make it more interesting? Let us work together to explore this topic. How about we brainstorm real-life applications?" This strategic pivot changed the atmosphere. The student's expression softened as he caught sight of her genuine intention to engage, and several others chimed in enthusiastically. Breath by breath, she transformed a moment of potential failure into a collective venture, yet, as the final bell rang, and students filed out, Sarah felt the disquiet still swirling within her. Despite the connection made and hurdles crossed, the specter of doubt lingered. As she looked over the notes she'd taken filled with questions, ideas, and a few mismatched responses, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. What would happen tomorrow? Could she build on this connection and create more meaningful dialogues? Her heart raced at the thought of future lessons. Would determination be enough to sustain this momentum, or would her fears resurface to haunt her? The next day loomed ahead like an untamed wildflower field, ripe with possibility, yet laden with uncertainty. Would she continue to rise, or would she falter once again? Sarah awoke to the persistent chirping of birds outside her window, a reminder that a new day was unfolding, filled with potential. Yet the echoes of the previous day's experience lingered in her mind, a mixture of pride and anxiety spiraling as she pondered her ability to build on that fragile connection with her students. What if today brought another wave of skepticism? Her stomach nodded with the thought, urging her to identify strategies to handle possible criticism before facing her class again. She grabbed her lesson plan, focusing on creating an environment where student voices flourished, yet a nagging whisper in her mind warned, what if they weren't interested? Pushing that thought away, she settled into a morning routine designed to ground her. A warm cup of coffee and a deep breath later, Sarah decided to revisit Lucy's teachings. She flipped through her notes from the workshop until one particular phrase punched through the chaos: the power of vulnerability can forge deeper connections. With this thought reverberating in her mind, she crafted a plan for the day. Instead of merely presenting new material, she would share her own learning struggles from childhood, a risky and personal strategy, but one that felt authentic. If they knew she had once sat in their seats, feeling small and uncertain, perhaps they would engage more openly. As she stepped into the classroom, the memory of yesterday's hesitant laughter filled her with renewed courage. The room buzzed, filled with students eagerly anticipating what lay ahead. Today, Sarah would harness that energy, diving deeper into dialogue, right alongside them. "Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to share a story with you," she began, her voice steady yet inviting. She recounted a few humorous, awkward moments from her own school days, showcasing her insecurities about science, a subject that was now her passion. As she spoke, she encouraged her students to share their own experiences, creating a web of shared stories that eased the tension lingering from the day before. Hands shot up eagerly. Students who had previously leaned back in their chairs now leaned forward, engaged in a vibrant exchange. Emily, a shy girl from the back, spoke up, revealing how she felt lost during labs. "I never get it," she admitted, her vulnerability breaking barriers. Recognizing this moment as a gift, Sarah smiled and replied, "It's okay not to get it right away. It took me years to feel confident. Let us tackle it together." In that instant, the room transformed. Instead of a monologue, Sarah facilitated a discussion full of ideas and challenges they could all tackle collectively. By embracing her vulnerability, she found herself cradled in a nurturing ambience, not just imparting knowledge, but joining her students in the learning process, widening the bridge she had begun to build. Yet, just as she felt momentum swelling, a familiar voice echoed a challenge. "But, Ms. Sarah, that doesn't help us take the test." Another student interjected, skepticism flaring again. Sarah's heart dropped briefly, the weight of doubt returning, but she recalled her notes. "Great point," she replied, taking a breath to anchor herself. "Tests can feel confining, but what if we use this time for real exploration? How can we turn our mistakes into our learning strengths?" The question spun the discussion toward generating solutions, and to her astonishment, their answers unveiled unexpected connections between concepts. It was as if the students had been waiting for an invitation to share their intellectual curiosity, an invitation she was learning to extend. With each conversation, her fears melted away, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and clarity. As the final bell echoed through the air, excitement filled the room. Sarah felt exhilarated. Not only had she engaged her students, but she had also discovered the profound impact of empathy in her teaching style. Yet amidst this triumph, a familiar doubt whispered in the recesses of her mind. Would she be able to replicate this energy and connection tomorrow? The clock was ticking, and Sarah realized that sustaining this trusting atmosphere required continuous evolution. What new strategies could she imbue into her teaching? Would she have the courage to balance vulnerability with authority as she navigated the complexities of adolescent minds? As she watched her students file out, she understood the depth of her journey had only just begun, and with it came the gnawing anticipation of challenges yet to surface. What awaited her the following day, and how could she continue building on what she had started? The uncertainty pulsed within her, a silent promise of growth and discovery. Sarah stood in front of a classroom decorated with colorful student artwork, the remnants of yesterday's lessons fresh in her memory. The day had come. It was time to embrace not only her role as an educator but also the profound transformation she had undergone. Looking around at the smiling faces, she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. The anxiety that had once been a suffocating shadow was now a distant echo, easily outweighed by the certainty that she belonged here. Weeks of relentless effort had thus far culminated in more than just teaching. Sarah had built relationships based on trust, vulnerability, and a shared love for learning. Her earlier insecurities twisted into a network of encouragement as she learned from her students just as they learned from her. Each lesson was no longer an obligation, but a joyous exploration. Today, she would introduce a new concept, ecosystems and their delicate balances. As she prepared, Sarah carefully constructed her lesson plan to include interactive elements, inviting students to participate in discussions rather than simply absorbing information. She had learned to trust their instincts and insights, recognizing that their unique perspectives added richness that she had once overlooked. Good morning, class. Today, we're going to dive into the world of ecosystems. Who can tell me what they think makes an ecosystem important? She began, her tone lively, eliciting a chorus of responses, a far cry from the wary silence of her first days as a teacher. Students eagerly chimed in with ideas, sharing thoughts on food chains and animal habitats. Ethan's previous enthusiasm for dinosaurs had blossomed into a broader interest in the environment, and he eagerly raised his hand, sharing his understanding with a vibrant spark in his voice. That's right, Ethan. And what would happen if one component disappeared? How does that affect everything else? The room shifted into a dynamic conversation, the students fully engaged. Sarah stood in the center, guiding thoughts and facilitating connections as they traversed the fragile web of life on Earth. Instead of confronting a hostile environment, she had forged a sanctuary of creativity. This growth was not only hers, it was theirs collectively, transforming doubts into discussions. Amidst the lesson, a significant moment arose when a student, who had previously been detached, spoke up hesitantly, "I don't quite get how we can fix problems in ecosystems. Isn't it too big for us?" Sarah took a deep breath, remembering her own fears when she first stepped into this role. In that moment, she shared her own challenge, feeling small amidst uncertainty just as she had to the class before. "You know, just like we're learning today, every small action can create a ripple effect. Each of you has the power to make a difference, big or small." The engagement morphed into an exploration of environmental projects they could undertake in the community. Sarah felt a rush of pride and confidence. Not only was she teaching facts, but she was instilling a sense of agency, a realization that they could affect change, much like she had done for herself. As the bell rang, releasing students into the hallways, Sarah felt a rush of exhilaration sweep over her. This was her achievement. No longer was she simply the waitress with unglamorous dreams, but an established educator, embodying the very essence of possibility she had once yearned for. Days melded into weeks, and in every class, Sarah's teaching transformed. Her passion revitalized her students and fueled their thirst for knowledge. She earned their trust and, in return, gave them something tangible to strive for, the belief that they could overcome challenges, that learning could be their pathway to empowerment. As she guided them, she found herself reflecting on her own growth, the meteoric rise from uncertainty to confidence. One brisk day, after her last class finished, an email popped into her inbox. As she opened it, a rush of anticipation and anxiety trickled through her. It was an invitation to present at a local education conference about her innovative teaching methods. The recognition filled her with a bubbling excitement, a stark contrast to the hesitant figure she had once been. "You did it, Mom!" Ethan exclaimed when she told him. Seeing the pride in his eyes filled Sarah with incandescent joy. She was not just teaching the curriculum, she was forging a renewed legacy, one that inspired Ethan to chase after his own dreams. With every challenge she faced, the stumbles, the laughter, the breakthroughs, Sarah stepped deeper into her identity, not merely as a teacher but as a mentor, an advocate, a beacon of possibility. No longer were her fears paralyzing, they propelled her, shaping her as she inspired and included each of her students. As she stepped onto the stage at the conference, she held her head high, embodying the journey she had accomplished. She had proven that determination, resilience, and the willingness to embrace vulnerability could yield truly transformational results. The applause that enveloped her wasn't just a recognition of her achievements, it validated her growth, her evolution. Sarah stood there, the momentous occasion solidifying her understanding. She was equitable, she was capable, and, most importantly, she was an inspiration born from her own transformative journey. The impact she had on her students reflected the mountains she climbed to become who she truly was, and in this personal victory, she knew she had conquered the weight of her past, the weight of doubt, for good. As this chapter closed, she was already eager for the next, ready to continue her journey, her heart open to the challenges and possibilities waiting beyond the horizon. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, comment your reactions and theories about the ending, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.